Good day, everybody. Welcome back to Middle Management Gamer Presents. This one's 34 years in the making. This is If You Haven't, You Should, Episode 2. Today we'll be playing Legacy of the Wizard. Originally released in Japan in 1987 as Dragon Slayer Drosselay Family. Re-released by Broderbund Software in the United States in 1988 as Legacy of the Wizard. Here is 5 reasons you should play. Number 1. What made this game interesting is you had multiple characters you could choose from. It is a family of Dragon Slayers. There they are, the Happy Family. They were called the Drosselay Family in Japan. They are known as the Warzens in America. You have Zemin, Mena, Roas, Lil, and Pachi. The warrior, the wizard, the ranger, the elf, and the monster, respectively. You go into the house. This is your character select screens. You can see they're all there, as are the grandparents, which are your password system. This is Zemin. He is the father, the warrior. You select him and the screen flashes, and you exit the house after selecting weapons. Warzin has a glove that you can unlock throughout the gameplay that allows him to move blocks around for his platforming parts of the dungeon. He wields an axe and does the most damage right out when attacking. He also, I think, takes the most damage or can be hit the most without dying. You can see the platforming is rather interesting. This is Mena. She is the sorceress. Her items revolve around magical based items. You can see here's the item select screen. I didn't show you the first time. She uses the hit rod, which moves blocks, and the wings, which allow her to fly. Her other main item is the key rod. I'll show that later. Using the wings, you can jump and stay in the air. However, it drains your magic. Using the hit rod, she can move blocks. Her attack is very weak. It travels relatively far compared to some of the other creatures. It does decent damage. She does not take damage very well. She is damaged heavily. The hit rod, as you can see, moves the blocks, and you can use them offensively. However, they also damage you if they hit you. They keep going back and forth until they stop or until you shove them into a wall. They can take out massive quantities of enemies. Her wings also allow her to travel over top of tight spikes. Nobody else can do it. That was the key rod, her other item, which you can use to unlock locked doors using her magic. Again, you got to be careful as you progress through, as you use your magic. If you run out, you cannot attack, and you may have to restart. This is Pachi. Pachi is a monster, kind of like the house cat. Pachi's an interesting character. Got a short-range weapon, is incredibly powerful, but you don't really need it. Pachi is immune to damage from monsters, as Pachi is a monster themselves. However, you can be damaged by spikes when platforming through the dungeon, so you have to be careful. The next character is Lil. Lil is listed as the elf as her class. I think modern day would probably lift her as a rogue or an acrobat. She jumps higher than anybody else. She also has access to the spring boots later on in the game. An item that is useful for her is the power boots, which allows you to drop on top of enemies to kill them. Her regular attack is incredibly weak, the weakest of everyone's, and she takes damage heavily. She uses the Matic, which has to be unlocked by another character, to platform through the game to bust blocks. The final character is Roas. Roas is your end game character. He doesn't really have a map section of his own. He has to go through his sister Lil's area, which requires him to use the jump shoes. He is also the only character that can use the crown, which allows him to retrieve the Dragon Slayer. And he is the only character that can use the Dragon Slayer. So as you proceed through the game, he uses swords. They are fairly weak but travel a good distance, so you can hit the enemies from a distance. Using the jump boots allows him to get to her section. He can use the crown to teleport using portraits. You have to find the right portraits to teleport around to get to the Dragon Slayer for him. Number 2, it's a Metroidvania with a twist. The twist is, instead of a single character collecting items to advance the map, the family members collect items for other family members. Pachi collects the power glove for Zemin. Zemin collects the hit rod for Mena. Lil also collects the wings for Mena. Mena collects the jump shoes for Lil and Roas to use. And all characters can collect other items that other characters can use throughout the game, such as the power boots that all characters can use. All characters must beat a boss in order to get the crown so that Roas can use them to collect the Dragon Slayer. With the Dragon Slayer in hand, you can defeat the final boss. Reason number 3, a gigantic sprawling map. This map is huge, and every character has their own section of dungeon to explore, which will require items to platform through them. Again, you must have the power glove for Zemin, you must have the hit rod and the wings for Mena, the jump shoes and the mattock for Lil, the crowns for Roas. Pachi is one of the few characters that doesn't need an item to get through his area, which is probably why most people start off with him to collect the items and kill the first boss. I spent an innumerable amount of after school hours trying different family members, picking different items, just trying to get a little further in the dungeon. There was no internet to ask for help. We were granted mercy by Nintendo Power when they released a full sprayed map of the dungeon. However, due to the compression, it was hard to make out the screenshots and even tell where to go. I finally gave up on this game due to number 4, the nightmarish difficulty. That, teamed with the release of the Super Nintendo, made me finally quit. I've seen the difficulty as a reason against playing this game in numerous reviews, but I see it as a mark in the game's favor. There's something satisfying about beating a game this difficult, and now with the internet, you can alleviate some of your frustration. The first thing that makes this game difficult is the inventory maintenance. You can only unlock items at the beginning of the playthrough or at the end, and having the right item is imperative to completing a playthrough. With Zemin, you need the glove to move his block and do his platforming. It can be incredibly repetitive and frustrating. Going to the next screen will reset the blocks. Sometimes you have to ride the blocks that you're trying to move with him. And as you can see, I'm doing this over top of a pit. If you fall, then all the blocks reset and you have to do it over again. You can also move the blocks in such a fashion that you can trap yourself in a room, and the only way to reset the blocks is to reset the game and start a new playthrough. Each character has their own item that makes for frustrating platforming. With Mena, it's the hit rod. You have to bounce the blocks around in order to get to specific items, in this situation her key rod. I make it look easy here, but this was after 17 or 18 tries. I just recorded the completion. In the next section, we have an example of what I call dig dugging. You can see if you look closely the differences in the blocks, and you know kind of where you need to move, but in older video games, it was harder to make those out on the crappy TVs. The blocks kind of all look the same, and if you fall through, you have to start all over. Sometimes, in order to move ahead, you have to know that there is a path to travel through, illusionary blocks that lead to the next section. Sometimes you have to go across blocks that disintegrate while dealing with monsters at the same time that can sap your life as you're trying to get to the next boss battle. Falling rarely means death, but it often means resetting and having to do the platforming all over again. When using Lil, the frustration is further compounded by having to jump from one area to the next, not knowing when the platform might give out underneath you, having the ceiling in the way of trying to make a longer jump so that you bounce down and fall through the floor, trying to make this jump over and over again while also using the mattock to bust the blocks above your head, and constantly going into the shop instead of being able to jump drives me crazy. But you have to get through because that is where her crown is at. Legacy of the Wizard also employs invisible enemies, as you can see. What's hard is you can learn where the enemies are, but you still can't kill them until you hit them. In this section, I'm having to move through with Mena, and every time I hit one of those invisible enemies, I lose about a quarter of my life. And I'm trying to get to that chest. On the way back through, they've respawned. This leads to death. Poor item management can lead to going up against the boss without the proper equipment. In this situation, I've run out of magic. The only thing I can do is die. Dying means going to the retry continue screen, which takes you back to the house from the last time you left it. If you managed to defeat Legacy of the Wizard, you'd be happy to know it was actually part 4 in a larger series. Part 1 was released in Japan only, however it was released in English. It was released on the PC-88. It is considered the progenitor of the modern action RPG. It did away with turn-based combat and added a top-view hack and slash. Inventory management allowed for interesting puzzles. This was considered to be the precursor to Legend of Zelda and Highlight. This would also lead to Falcom's current flagship adventure game series, Ys. In 1985, Xanadu was released. This was Dragon Slayer 2. It further developed action RPG mechanics, some of which we still use today, like items that would change your appearance, and a morality system, whereas a meter would fill and fall based on things that you did in game that were considered good and or bad. 1 year prior to the release of Legacy of the Wizard, Dragon Slayer Jr. or Romancia was released. There wasn't an English translation of this game available until 2005. However, this was a step back as it reduced some of the character customization and was more of a side-scrolling action-adventure game. To date, there are over 22 games in the Dragon Slayer series, one of which is the Nintendo game Xanadu. I look forward to doing a video on that, hoping you will play along with me, but that is a completely different road. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you haven't, you should play Legacy of the Wizard. Thanks for joining me today. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe, and make sure to ring the bell to get notified of future videos.